Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. As promised, we're circling back to the conversation we had yesterday afternoon and diving into some actual targets that are currently in the transfer portal that I really like for USC. And I think right off the bat, I want to start with we are all excited to start breaking down commitments. You all know I'm fired up about it. That being said, I do think Lincoln Riley in this USC program are going to be patient throughout this process. At the end of the day, we are less than 24 hours into that transfer portal being open. There are going to be a lot more names that come into the transfer portal over the next couple of days. So I don't think Lincoln Riley and USC are going to be jumping immediately on guys right now before they see what kind of the talent pool is going to look like by the end of the week. So I'm really excited to get into the names currently in the portal. We'll obviously continue to update it as names come into the portal. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. A massive shout out, as always, to the USC fans. Y'all know I love talking this program. The amount of support y'all continue to show truly does mean a lot. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. More importantly, would love to hear some names that maybe I left off the list that you think USC should be going after. And without further ado, let's get into some of the names that really piqued my interest. Now, I want to start with the three positions that we kind of settled on. USC needs to be prioritizing. One, the defensive line, specifically on the inside. And then number two, the offensive line, specifically at that offensive tackle position. Now, the first player that I want to talk about is a big dog in CJ West coming from Kent State. You talk about replacing Isaiah Rakes, 6'2", 315 pounds. That's how you replace a guy like Isaiah Rakes, who we were all really excited about in terms of playing that true nose, freeing up a guy like Bear Alexander to kind of be a little bit more of a productive game wrecker than he was put in those spots last year. I think CJ West could be kind of that guy that is going to take on some double teams. He's going to win at the point of attack, but I think most importantly, he's going to allow Bear Alexander to really dominate football games for USC in 2024. I think that's one of the bigger storylines is how can we get Bear Alexander in positions that he can really take over games? Because he flashed the dominance last year, but he was never put in those spots where he could really wreak havoc consistently for USC. Now, you get into CJ West, not only do you love the body, low pad level, kind of built like he's built like a fire hydrant. And that's not a shot at CJ West. That's the kind of body that we are looking for in terms of low pads, big body, going to take on double teams. What I love about CJ West's game is this is a guy that's elite against the run. You talk about winning on first and second down. CJ West grades out from PFF as an 85 run defense grade, but more importantly, 24 run stops. And the number that I always like to look at, average depth of tackle, 0.9 yards down the field. What does that tell us about CJ West? He's winning at the line of scrimmage. He's getting off blocks, making his plays at or behind the line of scrimmage. I'm really fired up about CJ West. Also adds a 10.7% pass rush win rate from the inside at 6'2", 315. Some impressive numbers. Now, the only question you have about CJ West is, can you make that jump from the group of five level in the MAC to the Big Ten level? That is a big jump, as we all know. And I will say CJ West, went back and watched a little CJ West, played really good against MAC conference play, not so good when he made the jump to the Power 5 level, probably had his worst game against Arkansas from what I saw. So you do have some question marks about him jumping up to the Power 5 level, but this is a body that we absolutely want on this USC defensive line. The next guy I want to talk about, and again, especially on this defensive line position, this is where I expect USC to be the most patient. Now, there are a lot of other programs that want interior defensive line depth, but what I would kind of note is there are going to be some bodies that we're going to be coveting in the SEC. And the rule with the SEC is you can't transfer within the SEC. So the big bodies that are transferring out from SEC programs, USC is going to have a really good shot at a lot of those guys because they can't transfer within the SEC. And I think that puts USC in the driver's seat at a lot of those bodies and names, especially with that Georgia program. That's got, 8, 9 guys. Obviously, I know USC fans are fired up about Mikael Williams. I could see 2 or 3 names hitting the portal from that Georgia program that I think USC is probably waiting and maybe going to really go after some of those bodies. The last guy on the inside, I want to just quickly buzz by. I think a lot of USC fans are familiar with this name. Jermaine Lea, formerly Arizona State, goes to Louisville. When healthy, this is a guy that is a very, very good football player. I mean, I think the big red flag is has had a couple season-ending injuries, has struggled to stay on the field on a consistent basis. From a health standpoint, you take a look at what he does when he's on the field. This is a guy that gets behind the backfield. Very similar kind of play style to Barry Alexander, not as dominant, but a guy that likes to penetrate, likes to get behind the line of scrimmage. I personally lean to a body like CJ West more because I think that's what USC is looking for. But Jermaine Lea is a very good, one of the better interior defensive linemen available. Take them both. I mean, we said this, USC, you want to go into next year feeling good about multiple guys on the inside. Depth is a priority going into the Big Ten. As many of these quality bodies as you can land for USC, I think that's who you're going after. Now, those are some of the names that are piquing my interest on the inside of that defensive line. Want to talk about a few offensive linemen that I think are interesting as well. I think I want to start off with Andrew Chambley from Arkansas, who checks a lot of boxes in terms of what USC wants. He has starting experience in the SEC. He's a young guy that has, in my mind, a super high ceiling in terms of what he can be. Andrew Chambley, only going into year 3 of his college football career, this is a guy that could start at tackle for you in 2024, but also be a developmental piece for the next couple of years within this USC program. High upside, 35-inch arms. Played solid football in the SEC, and when you combine the starting experience with the high upside, I think that makes Andrew Chambley a really attractive offensive tackle for USC. A lot of smoke and buzz around Marcus Bryant. For my money, the best offensive tackle that's in the transfer portal. Sounds like he might be going to Washington, so maybe Marcus Bryant coming off the board. If I'm USC, I'm still pushing hard for Marcus Bryant. The other offensive lineman that announced he was going to the portal a couple of weeks ago, but I think I saw this on some message boards, and I really would agree with this one, is Chad Lindenberg coming over from Georgia. What I love about Chad is he could be a starter at that right tackle spot. He certainly comes in and provides competition for a guy like Mason Murphy. But I think more importantly, he gives you a lot of depth. He's that sixth man on the offensive line. He has experience on the inside. He's got experience at the tackle position. I think Chad Lindenberg would make a lot of sense for USC, not only in terms of a starting spot for USC, but a guy that gives you a lot of versatility and depth on that offensive line heading into 2024 because of the versatility that he has. Now, the last position I want to talk about really quick is the wide receiver room, where it looks like USC is going to try to add at least one wide receiver. We had the conversation yesterday. It might be tough to convince wide receivers to transfer to USC with how loaded that wide receiver room is. The first guy I want to talk about, Justice Ross Simmons, formerly a Rochester, New York kid, so Rock City. I love to see that. He'll be one of my favorite players if he goes to USC. Secondly, I don't know what the recruiting community was doing with this kid out of high school. I mean, this guy was 6'3", 200 pounds coming out of high school, transferred to California for his last year of football, went back and watched the high school film. This was one of those diamond in the roughs. He goes to Colorado State, has been a huge contributor during his first 2 years at Colorado State. Upside with this kid. 6'3", 205, extremely good after the catch, big physical frame, basketball background, which helps you working down the field. I really like the traits that Justice Ross Simmons brings to the table. And again, if he wants to come to USC, this is a body that I would bet on those traits every single day of the week. Now, the other option for USC at the wide receiver room, the way I see it, is a guy in KeAndre Lambert Smith, who I think is just a better, more polished wide receiver. And quite frankly, if USC was going to take one wide receiver, I'd probably lean KeAndre Lambert Smith. The numbers aren't necessarily going to jump out at you. He's over 1,000 yards for his career. He's playing on a Penn State offense that, when you talk about brutal passing attacks, I don't think it gets any more brutal than Penn State over the last couple of years. He was one of the best wide receivers in the Big Ten. He is a guy that catches for 1,000 yards on different offenses, really smooth mover, knows how to create separation. I would say Justin Ross Simmons from Colorado State probably has a little bit more upside, but KeAndre Lambert Smith from right now is the better wide receiver. I'm not going to lie. I kind of see some Jordan Addison vibes from his game. Smooth route runner, knows how to create separation. No, I'm not saying he's Jordan Addison going to transfer to USC and go berserk. That being said, I do think he's a damn good wide receiver and makes this USC wide receiver room a heck of a lot better. Those are some of the names that I've had so far that I think would be good fits for USC. Again, we are about 13 hours in to the transfer portal, so there are going to be a lot more names that are going to be popping up for USC. Of course, we'll be keeping you guys updated. Appreciate y'all rocking with the fellas. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.